This week, we're going to look at a few artists in the acts and actions category, or sometimes it's the lack of the action. In a few weeks, you are going to be making some narratives, and you may have to be in your narratives because you're going to need actors, or it might be someone else. And I want to help clarify the difference between acting and performing actions. It's a subtle difference, but looking at the artists in this week, often they're just simply performing action or a lack of action, and that's what's going to be acceptable in your projects. We're going to try to avoid a lot of acting. When there is acting in these videos, it's really based on performance art, using the body, and we're still able to look at the pieces and the symbols in the pieces and the colors and really use the actions as a symbol. So again, it's more about using the action as a symbol than it is about acting or trying to evoke emotions. The first artist we're going to look at is Shirin Neshat, and she was born in 1957 in Iran. And when she was born, Iran was a very liberal country. Her father encouraged her and all of her sisters to get a strong formal education. She went to a Catholic school. Iran was a place that Hollywood stars would go to for luxurious party weekends. And when she left and came back, Iran was a completely different country because of the Iranian Revolution that had happened. And when she came back, women were presented in a completely different light than she had ever seen before. They were cloaked, literally. They were forced to be under control of their fathers and their brothers. They were women previously who had been very liberated in the culture, were now being controlled by the male dominated culture. So she first came onto the scene with her Women of Allah's series, Women of Allah. And in these photographs, she portrayed women, Iranian women, in very stark, contrasting positions, often where they're shown to be feminine, but yet still very strong and bold. A lot of women fought in the Iranian Revolution. So for Shirin Neshat, it was quite a contrast to have women who had been so strong and had been leaders to now have to be so cloaked and under control. So this series was part of how she spoke out about the contrast of what she felt was happening to women in her culture. And after she made this series, she was working on this for many years, she became involved in the video art world, continuing again to focus on the contrast between how men and women are treated in her culture. And a lot of her pieces, her video pieces, were diptychs, meaning two pieces side by side. And she would often portray the men on one side and the women on the other. And as you can see in this one, the men are on the right and they're all in white, and the women are on the left and they're all in black. And this is pretty consistent with the culture of how people are dressed. And it's a very stark contrast to how I think she believes that the people themselves should be expressed. So in other words, why did the women have to wear such dark clothing when they have a lot of the light spirits? The piece that I would like you to watch is called Turbulent, and it's about, I think, 9 minutes long. In the first part of the video, we see a man, and he comes to the microphone and he starts to sing, and then he is applauded. In the second half of the video, there's a woman who comes to the microphone, and she sings. There are a lot of symbols in this video that I'd like you to look for. The symbols are in the scenery, in the color, in how the camera treats them, in the actions. First, we have the man. He has an audience. He has his back to the audience. They're all wearing white. They applaud him when he's done. He's singing something that sounds very traditional, melodic even. As she starts to sing, he looks bewildered. He's not certain how he feels about this, it seems. And the camera moves around her 360 degrees. She doesn't have any privacy. It exposes everything about her. And her song is more like a primal scream. She moves her voice fantastically and creates strange echoes, guttural almost. And there's no audience and no one to applaud her. So I think you can come to your own conclusions as to how this piece using the symbols and the actions and the camera and the color, how she uses this piece to be able to represent the contrast of how men and women are being treated. I'd like you to watch it before I say any conclusions. After working in video for many years, Shirin Neshat has also started making films. So if you're interested in her work, I highly recommend this film called Women Without Men. It follows the lives of 4 women, all seeking their own paths until eventually they find each other. And some make out better than others. The next artist I'd like to talk about and have you watch is Steve McQueen, a British artist, film director, producer, screenwriter, and originally a video artist. Here are some of the films he's made. You might have heard of Hunger, Shame, 12 Years a Slave, and he's made many others. A consistent theme in Steve McQueen's work is he makes films about the underdog, people outcasts of society, literally slaves, people who have different kinds of addictions, like a sex addiction or hunger, people who are protesting IRA, who are part of the IRA protesting British rule. The video actually, that I'd like you to watch is Deadpan from 1997. So before he became a famous film director, he made this video. This is a video piece that is based off of a short segment in a much longer film, in a 2-hour long film, by the silent actor comedian Buster Keaton, who's a slapstick humor comedian. And in the film, Steamboat Bill, starring Buster Keaton, there's a scene about halfway through where there's a humongous storm, a hurricane, and things are blowing left and right, and Buster Keaton is being blown left and right. And he keeps going from scene to scene where he just barely escapes death. And in this scene that happens exactly 1 hour into the film, Buster Keaton kind of pauses, catches his breath as he's been running from near death moment to near death moment. And he thinks he's okay here. He's kind of rubbing his neck and taking a breath. And then all of a sudden, the whole front of the house falls down on him. But you see how there's the top window and there's no glass in there, luckily. That's exactly where it lands over him. So he is safe. And he kind of takes a moment and he looks around and he says, gosh, golly gee. And he doesn't really because it's a silent film. And he runs away and he goes on to the next disaster, which he averts, and he's safe. But he keeps going. I have a link on Blackboard for you to be able to watch this 30-second moment from the 2-hour long film that Steve McQueen captures. So in Steve McQueen, he takes that moment and he recreates it into a 4.5-minute long video called Deadpan, but he repeats it. So he's standing in front of a building, just like Buster Keaton. This one only has one window. It doesn't have a door. He stands there and he's stoic. There's no expression. He's not acting. There's no action. It's the lack of action. And the building falls on top of him. And this repeats over and over again. And the camera moves and it shows it to us from different angles. And there are a few times when it shows close-ups, a close-up of his face and a close-up of his shoes. And what we see when we see the shoes is that there are no shoelaces. So this is clearly a symbol, something that he's using, his language, he's trying to get us to understand. And the camera is very much a language. You can see here, there's a wide range of camera angles. It moves from the front, from the back, from below, to face on. But the point is, Steve McQueen, he doesn't move. He just stands there as the building keeps falling on top of him. So what do you think this means? Buster Keaton, the building falls on him, and he says, gosh golly gee, and he jumps out of there, right? As most people would do. But Steve McQueen, and by the way, this is Steve McQueen here in the video himself. He stands and the building keeps falling on him, which is not something that most people would do. So why doesn't he move? And why those close-ups? What is he telling us? And why is he dressed the way he's dressed? So I'd like you to watch this, and you can watch the recreation, or not, sorry, the moment, the inspiration of Buster Keaton, before I tell you any more. And here are some moments from the Buster Keaton film just to see his comparison. The last artist, born in the 60s in Switzerland, Pippi Lodi Rist. She was actually in a band before she got into video art, and that a little bit made it hard for her to get into video art. A lot of other artists didn't take her very seriously. She also studied commercial art, illustration, and photography. So the piece that I'd like you to analyze is called Ever Is All Over. And in this piece, this one does have acting, but what we're really looking at here is the action. In this piece, we see a woman walking casually down the street. Look how she's dressed. Pretty feminine, right? A lovely, beautiful baby blue swaying dress, and she's carrying something, a flower. And she looks quite happy. She's walking down the street. And this video is actually an installation. So there are two sides. You're seeing the corner here. So the close-up I just showed you is on the left, and on the right side, we see a close-up of the flower that she is holding. And throughout the video, you'll see other flowers. There's just it's a wall of beautiful, beautiful flowers on the right-hand side. And like many of her installations, she presents this in a large space where the viewer can be quite comfortable on huge pillows as you are watching this. And what we see, as you see in this clip here, is the woman, this beautiful, graceful woman, starts smashing the windows and cars as she's walking down. And she's using the flower as a weapon to smash them. But look at her. This is very symbolic. Look at how she's dressed. Why the blue dress? Why the red shoes? Why the flower? She's smiling. She's as happy as can be. She's carefree, in fact. She's sort of an idyllic looking feminine characteristic of a woman. Oh, jumping ahead here. Somebody stole her video. So I don't know if anyone has ever seen this, but Beyonce did the exact same thing, but with a bat instead of a flower. So I'd like you to analyze the clothing and the flowers and think about, what is Pippi Lodi Rist saying here? What do all of these things mean? So watch the video, and then if you'd like to hear some of my thoughts on it, you can watch the next video.